Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Ganaganatam Sham Sharadava Nalalidaloka Tranaya Karuna Ganaganatam Praptasya Kalyana Gunanavasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam 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 Charanara Vrindam Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Mahaprabhu ki Tananita Gita Vaditramadhyam Manasurasena Romanchakampasru Tarangabhajo Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shri Vigrahara Dana Nityanana Shringaratanama Niramajanado Joktasya Bhaktamsya Niyunjatopi Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Chaturvidha Shri Bhagavat Prasado Svatvana Triptam Hari Bhakta Sangam Chaturvidha Kridvaiva Tripti Vajata Shadeva Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Shiradikama Davayara Para Madhurya Leela Gunarupanamna Shiradika Pratikshana Swa Dhanalalupasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam Ne kunjayuno Ratikelisidai Jayali Bhiri Jukti Apekshaniya Ne kunjayuno Tatrati Daksha Atibalabhasya Vande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shashrim Ruktastatthava Yataiva Sadhavi Sakshadharitena Shamasta Shashrim Came to Pravarja Priya Eva Tasya Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Yasya Prasada Bhagavat Prasada Yasya Prasada Nagati Kutapi Yasya Dhyayam Stuvam Tasya Yasatrin Sandhyam Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Bande Guru Shri Charanara Vrindam. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pachatare Shatarine Namaste Sarasvati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Chaitanya Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gora Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Hare, Hare Ramo, Hare Ramo, Ramo Ramo, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram. Hare Yaraya Namah Krishna Jadavaya Namah. Jadavaya Madhavaya Keshavaya Namah. Gopal Govindaram Shrimadhusudam. Giridhari Gopinath Madana Mohan. Shri Chaitanya Nityananda Shri Advaita Sita. Hari Guru Vaishnava Bhagavata Gita. Shri Rupa Sanatan Bhattaraguna. Shri Jiva Gopala Bhatta Dasaraguna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Ram, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Shri Radha, Nila Madhava Radha, Nila Madhava Radhe. Jayo Jagannath, Jayo Baladeva, Jayo Subhadrama, Jayo Sudarshan Chakra. Jaya Sitaram, Jayo Sitaram, Sitaram, Jayo Lakshman Hanuman. Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha, Jayo Lakshmi Narasingha, Lakshmi Narasingha, Jayo Prahlad Maharaj. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur, I Gaur Pramanandi Haribo. Jai Vishnu Paraparamhansa Prabhupada Kacharya, Astottara Sarasi Shimari Divine Grace. अभचरविंद भक्ति वेदांत स्वामी महाराज श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय। इस्कॉन प्रतिष्ठा विभूति संस्थापक आचार्य वैष्णव शिरोमणि पातित पावन श्रील प्रभुपाद जी महाराज की जय। श्री गौर्य गुरु वर्गापचित उद्धार की जय। श्री रूप सनातन भक्त रघुनाथ श्री जीव गोपाल भक्त दास गुणसत गोस्वामी प्रभु की जय। नामाचार्य श्रील हरिदास ठाकुर जी की जय। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। प्रेम से कहो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर शिवसारी गौर भक्त वृंद की जय। जय परम दयाल से नित्यानंद प्रभु की जय। जय प्रेम नाम संकीर्तन एक जनाक प्रेम पुरुषोत्तम सच्चिनंदन स्म गौरंग श्री चैतन्य महाप्रभु गौर हरि महावरनाय अवतार की जय। गोलोकेर प्रमधान हरिनाम संकीर्तन जय की जय। जुग धर्म हरे कृष्ण महामंत्र की जय। बृहत्दांग ट्रांस बुक डिस्ट्रीब्यूशन सेवा की जय। श्री श्री राधा कृष्ण गोप गोपना राधा कुंज श्याम कुंज गिरिराज गोवर्धन की जय। श्री ब्रजबिम वृंदावन मथुर धाम की जय। द लॉर्डशिप श्री श्री राधा नील माधव की जय। श्री माया पूर्णवती चक्र धाम की जय। परम करुणा श्री श्री गौर निताय की जय। श्री पुरुषोत्तम चित्र जगन्नाथपुरी धाम की जय। श्री श्री जगन्नाथ स्वामी बलदेव प्रभु सुभद्रा देवी सुदर्शन चक्र भगवान की जय। श्री राम लक्ष्मण भक्त हनुमान जी की जय। भक्ति सर्व विघ्न विनाशन कारण श्रृंगरे भगवान की जय। जगंगा माय जमुना माय की जय। तुलसी महारानी वृंद देवी भक्ति देवी की जय। श्री मथुरा रानी की जय। समवेत भक्त वृंद की जय। निताय गौरी प्रमानंद हरिबो। All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glory to the assembly bodies. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru Shri Gauranga.
Namaste Narasimhaya. Namaste Narasimhaya. Prahlada Ladadaine. Prahlada Ladadaine. Hiranyakashipurvakshaha. Shilatankanakalaye. Ito Narsimha Parato Narsimha. यतो यतो यामि ततो नृसिंह बहिर्नृसिंह हृदये नृसिंह नरसिंहमदिं शरणं प्रपदे तव करकमलवरेणाखामद्भुतशृङ्गां ललिता हिरण्यकशिपो तनुभृङ्गां केशवधृता नरहरे रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे केशवधृता नरहरे रूपा जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जय जगदीश हरे जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो नरसिंहदेव जयो प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज प्रहलाद महाराज जयो प्रहलाद महाराज जयो जयो प्रभुपाद 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 जयो जयो प्रभुपाद जयो जयो गुरुदेव 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 जयो जयो गुरुदेव निताय गौर हरि बोल हरि बोल हरि बोल निताय गौर हरि बोल बोलो भक्त विघ्न विनाशक नरसिंहदेव भगवान की भक्त शिरोमणि प्रहलाद महाराज की शिला प्रभुपाद की निताय गौर प्रेमानंदे।
Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi Radha Krishna Seva Pavo Eya Vilasi Jetomaya Sharanaloy Tara Vanshapurna Kripa Kori Korotare Vrindavanavasi Moraya Vilas Vilas Kunjediova Nayane Heribo Sada Jugala Ruparasi Eni Vedana Daro Sakir Anugata Koro Seva Adhikaradiye Koro Nijadasi Dina Krishna Dase Koi Eye Namora Hoi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayana Vasi Shri Radha Govinda Preme Sadayana Vasi Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama Tulasi Krishna Prayasi Namo Nama Yani Kani Cha Papani Brahma Tati Kani Cha Tani Tani Pranashanti Pradakshina Pade Pade Yani kani cha papani Brahma tati kani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade Yani kani cha papani Brahma tati kani cha Tani tani pranashanti Pradakshina pade pade Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Tosi Maharani, Jaya Tosi Maharani, Jaya Tosi Maharani, Jaya Tosi Maharani. Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi, Jaya Vrinda Devi. Nitai Gora Haribo, 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 Nitai Gora Haribo.
Krishna ki Te Guru Vapanam Shreyakari Vachanti Kavitaranam Yavatu Jivanam Ananda Mudivadhanam Sadipadam Sunna Nitaswadanam Sarvatmasam Param Krishna Sankirtan Nanam Sarvabhati Uttama Shakti Satya Kasmane Ara Aditi Prabhupada Durdhaivam Vishamya Anuraha Vinati Smitena Yavati Krishna Samanadena Kirtanya Sahi Nadnam 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 Paritamara Vishamya Mamadanani Danani Shri Mukta Bhakti Rahanti Vikari Vainandam Jatim Karam Tamam Krishna Bhagavan Vipaya Bhavadam Pradim Shanti Nandarasmi Arya Pranam Jaya Matai Siddham Bhutala Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you, Dhamma, for this important deed. Glory to the Sri Krishna Sankirtana, into the Kali of the Vyasa Community, and finish the fight mission life with good authority and value. The Sankirtana is the primary difference for humanity to life. God is spread the grace in the rich community. It is the life of all friends and to life. It increases the mission council with bliss and enables us to fully test and make for our always anxious from our rule. So we can along to render over the riches human beings, and thus we have the many of Krishna and all these transcendental names who will worship all the friends and community. It is not even hard and fast rules to stand in the mind. Oh my Lord, our assignments enable us to easily practice the Holy Community, and in some cases I have no practice. One genuine is the Lord in the heart of true mind. Think oneself Lord and scornful, as if the more soaring than the truth, devoid of all sense of false pursuit, as if the very close to all sacred areas. In such state of mind, one can find the word of God. Almighty Lord, I do not have to come with flesh, nor do I have faith to win it, but I will win with powers. I will win with powers.
Just to worship service first, yeah. Free to do anything for him, for Lord, unconditional. Shri Chaitanya Shastakam Ki Jai. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Name Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharya Nirvisesa Sumavadi Koskatesta. To blaspheme the devotees who dedicate their lives to propagating the holy names of the Lord. Consider the names of demigods like Lord Shiva or Lord Brahma to be equal to or independent of the names of Lord Vishnu. To disobey the orders of the spiritual master. To blaspheme the Vedic literature in pursuance to the Vedic version. To consider the glories of chanting Hare Krishna as imagination. To give some interpretation on the holy name of the Lord. To consider the chanting the holy name of the Lord. To consider the chanting of Hare Krishna as one of the auspicious ritualistic activities which are from the Vedas as fruitive activities or karmakanda. To instruct the faithless person about the glories of the holy name. To not have complete faith in chanting the holy names, and to maintain material attachments even after understanding so many instructions in this matter. It is also an offense to be inattentive. Chanting. Every devotee who claims to be a Vaishnava must carefully guard against these 10 offenses in order to quickly achieve the desired success, Krishna Prema. Now let us offer our most humble obeisances unto the Vaishnava devotees of the Lord. They are desired trees that can fulfill the desires of everyone, and they are full of compassion for the fallen conditioned souls. Vanchakalpatarabhyascha kripasindhubhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha vaishnava thakur ki jai. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvani Pacharani Nirvisesa Sanyavad Paskati Srimad Bhagavatam Grantaraj Ki Jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Janmadya Yato Nivayad Itaratas Charte Sovigyaswarat Tene Brahma Hridaya Adikavaye Muyanti Yatsurayaha Tejo Varimedam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Tisargo Misha Damna Svena Sadadhirasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi. O my Lord, Shri Krishna, son of Vasudeva, O all-pervading personality of Godhead, I offer my respectful obeisances unto you. I meditate upon Lord Shri Krishna because he is the absolute truth and the primeval cause of all causes, of the creation, sustenance, and destruction of manifested universes. He is directly and indirectly conscious of all manifestations, and he is independent because there is no other cause beyond him. It is he only who first imparted the Vedic knowledge unto the heart of Brahmaji, the original living being. By him, even the great sages and demigods are placed into illusion. As one is bewildered by the illusory representations of water seen on fire or land seen on water, only because of him do the material universes, temporarily manifested by the reactions of 3 modes of nature, appear factual although they are unreal. I therefore meditate upon him, Lord Shri Krishna, who is eternally existent in transcendental abode, which is forever free from the illusory representations of the material world. I meditate upon him, for he is the absolute truth. Dharma pujita kaitotra paramo nirmatsaranam satam vedyam vastavamatra vastu shivadam tapa trayon mulam Shrimad Bhagavate Mahamani Krite Kim va purer Ishwaraha Sadyo Hridi Avurijite Tra Kriti Bahi Sususabhistakshana. Completely rejecting all religious activities which are materially motivated. This Bhagavata Purana propounds the highest truth, which is understandable by those devotees who are fully pure in heart. The highest truth is reality distinguished from illusion for the welfare of all. Such truth uproots the threefold miseries. This beautiful Bhagavatam compiled by the great sage Vyasadeva in his maturity is sufficient in itself for God realization. What is the need of any other scripture? As soon as one attentively and submissively hears the message of Bhagavatam, by this culture of knowledge, the Supreme Lord is established within his heart. Nigama kalpatarur galitam phalam Sukamukad amrita dravya samyutam Pibata bhagavatam rasam alayam Mahur aho rasaka bhuvibhavakaha. O expert and thoughtful men, relish Srimad Bhagavatam, the mature fruit of the desire to read Vedic literatures. It emanated from the lips of Sri Sukadeva Goswami. Therefore, this fruit has become even more tasteful. Although its nectarian juice was already relishable for all, including liberated souls. Shindatam Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hiryantak Stohi Bhadrani Vidunati Suhitsatam. To hear about Krishna from Vedic literatures, or to hear from him directly through the Bhagavad Gita, is itself righteous activity. And for one who hears about Krishna, Lord Krishna, who is dwelling in everyone's heart, acts as a best-wishing friend and purifies the devotee who constantly engages in hearing of him. Nastapresu bhadresu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavate utamasloke bhaktir bhavati naistaki. In this way, a devotee naturally develops his dormant transcendental knowledge. As he hears more about Krishna from the Bhagavatam and from the devotees, he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. Tadarajastamo bhava kamalobadayaschaye cheta itaranavidam stitvam sattve prasidati. By development of devotional service, one becomes freed from the modes of passion and ignorance, and thus material lust and avarice are diminished. Evam prasana manaso bhagavat bhakti yogataha bhagavat tattva vikyanam muktasangasya jayate. When these impurities are wiped away, the candidate remains steady in his position of pure goodness, becomes enlivened by devotional service, and understands the science of God perfectly. Vidyate hridaya grantis, chidyante sarvasamsaya, shiyante chasya karmani, rista evat manishware. Thus bhakti yoga severs the hard knot of material affection and enables one to come at once to the stage of a samsayam samagram, understanding of the supreme absolute truth personality of Godhead. Therefore, only by hearing from Krishna or from his devotee in Krishna consciousness can one understand the science of Krishna. Shishi Guru Vastaka prayers ki jai. The spiritual master is receiving benediction from the ocean of mercy, just as a cloud pours water on a forest fire to extinguish it. So the spiritual master delivers the materially afflicted world by extinguishing the blazing fire of material existence. I offer my respectful obeisance unto the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is an ocean of auspicious qualities. Chanting the holy name, dancing in ecstasy, singing and playing musical instruments. The spiritual master is always gladdened by the Sankirtan movement of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Because he is relishing the mellows of pure devotion within his mind, sometimes his hair stands on end. He feels quivering in his body, and tears flow from his eyes like waves. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always engaged in the temple worship of Shri Radha and Krishna. also engages his disciples in such worship. They dress the deities in beautiful clothes and ornaments, clean their temple, and perform other similar worship of the Lord. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always offering Krishna 4 kinds of delicious food. Analyzes that which is licked, chewed, drunk, and sucked. When the spiritual master sees that the devotees are satisfied by eating Bhagavad Prasada, he is satisfied. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is always eager to hear and chant about the unlimited conjugal pastimes of Radhika and Madhava. And their qualities, names, and forms. The spiritual master aspires to relish these at every moment. I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is very dear because he is expert in assisting the gopis who at different times make different tasteful arrangements for the perfection of Radha and Krishna's conjugal loving affairs within the groves of Vrindavana. I offer my most humble obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master. The spiritual master is to be honored as much as the Supreme Lord because he is the most confidential servitor of the Lord. This is acknowledged in all revealed scriptures and followed by all authorities. Therefore, I offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of such a spiritual master who is a bona fide representative of Sri Hare Krishna. By the mercy of the spiritual master, one receives the benediction of Krishna. Without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot make any advancement. Therefore, I should always remember and praise the spiritual master. At least 3 times a day, I should offer my respectful obeisance to the lotus feet of my spiritual master. Shri Brahma Samhita ki jai, Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Anadiradi Govinda Sarvakarana Karanam. Chintamani Prakara Satma Sukalpa Vriksha Laksha Vritesu Surabhira Vipaliyantam Lakshmi Sahasra Satasam Brahma Sevyamanam Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Vainam Kvananto Aravinda Dalayataksham Parhavatam Samasitam Buddha Sundarangam Kandarpakoti Kamaniya Vishesha Sobham Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Alola Chandra Kala Sadvanamalya Vamsi Ratnam Gadam Pranayakeli Kala Vilasam Shamam Jivanga Lalitam Niyata Prakasam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami Angani Yasya Sakalendriya Vrittimanti Pasyanti Panti Kalyanti Chiram Jaganti Ananda Chinmaya Sadujvala Vigrahasya Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Ananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedesa durlabam adurlabam atma bhakto Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Pantastu Koti Satavatsara Sampragamyo Vayoratapi Manaso Munipungamanam Sopyastiyat Prapadasimya Vichintya Tattve Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Ekop Yasora Chayatum Jagadanda Kotim Shaktirasti Jagadanda Yat Shaktirasti Jagadanda Chaya Yadanta Andantarasta Paramanu Chayantarastam Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami Yad Bhava Bhavita Diyo Manajastataiva Samprapya Rupa Mahima Sanayana Bhusaha Suktal Yameva Nigama Pratitaistuvanti Govindamadi Purisham Tamaham Bhajami. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 5, Verse 31. Taijasattu vikurvanad Indriyani dasabhavam Jnana Shakti Kriya Shakti Buddhi Pranascha Taijaso Sutram Tvak Grana Drigjiva Vakdor Medrangri Payava Vakdor Megrangri Payasa Payava. Translation by Srila Prabhupada, by further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs, like the ears, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, all are generated. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. The living condition in material existence depends more or less on one's intelligence and powerful living energy. Intelligence, to counteract the hard struggle for existence, is assisted by the senses for acquiring knowledge, and the living energy maintains himself, the living energy maintains himself by manipulating the active organs like the hands and legs. But on the whole, the struggle for existence is an exertion of the mode of passion. Therefore, all the sense organs, headed by the intelligence and the living energy, prana, are different products and byproducts of the second mode of nature, called passion. This mode of passion, however, is the product of the air element as described before. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. By further transformation of the mode of passion, the sense organs, like the ears, skin, nose, eyes, tongue, mouth, hands, genitals, legs, and the outlet for evacuating, together with intelligence and living energy, are all generated. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So, this progressive material creation is described step by step in detail by Srila Prabhupada. But to actually understand what our position in this material world requires some deep thought. And what makes people think throughout history is the struggle for existence. Everyone is struggling for existence. And you have to fight many, or struggle against many negative and delimiting things. Like, for example, the farmer depends more or less on the weather. Sometimes it's too hot, sometimes it's too cold, sometimes it's not enough rain, sometimes it's too much rain, sometimes there are predators like insects and moths and butterflies, and there are rabbits and rats and other animals, bears and coyotes and bobcats and cougars, and all these things are there, and there's funguses and there's bacteria and diseases. It's a struggle, and then there's people. Some people are thieves; they'll come and steal things, and some people will try and sabotage you. And so you have the nature, then you have people, and also there are natural cataclysmic events, hurricanes and windstorms and flooding and tsunamis and earthquakes and tornadoes. The list goes on and on. There's all these different things, and people have to struggle against them. And then there's government, and then there's government laws. Some may be good, some may be very bad. So people are always struggling, and there's competition, right? The animals and insects are competing with the farmer, and then there's other farmers competing with the farmer, and then there's farmers in foreign countries that are competing with the farmer. So there's competition. So the main thing is that there is struggle for existence. And the struggle for existence has caused many philosophers to think how to overcome that struggle for existence. And everyone is working for some kind of, as we say, dharma, artha, kama, moksha, some kind of religiosity, some kind of economic development, dharma, and artha, kama, some kind of sense gratification, and some kind of liberation. So this is the pluses and minuses of material life. But everybody is struggling. No one can say I'm not struggling. And against all these different things, and especially the competition. Well, due to that all-pervading problem of the struggle for existence, many philosophies have come up to address the struggles of the living entity and perhaps try and make them easier. So one of them is communism. And we touched on it a little bit yesterday, but today we'll go a little deeper into it, because Prabhupada has spent a long time talking about this. But before that, let's go back in the previous purport, and Prabhupada explains the instruction of the whole Bhagavad Gita. What is that? The senses are never to be stopped in their engagements, but one should purify them by engaging them in the pure service of sense gratification of the master of the senses. The master of the senses is Krishna, or Rishikesha. So, and then Prabhupada said, this is the instruction of the whole Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna wanted first of all to satisfy his own senses by his decision not to fight with his kinsmen and friends. But Lord Shri Krishna taught him the Bhagavad Gita just to purify Arjuna's decision for sense gratification. Therefore Arjuna agreed to satisfy the senses of the Lord, and thus he fought the battle of Kurukshetra as the Lord desired. Well, here now is the point, that people come to this material world for sense gratification. They walk away from Krishna because they want to independently engage in sense gratification. Every one of us. That's why we came. And Krishna creates the material world to give the facility for the bewildered living entities who walk away from him. He gives them the facility to engage in sense gratification if that's what they want. But the material nature, Krishna appoints Durga as the person in charge of the material nature, just like the governor appoints a prison warden who's in charge of managing the prison where there are prisoners. So Durga is the person who's in charge of all the prisoners, that's us, who have walked away from Krishna, who have forgotten Krishna, and who want to be little Krishnas in the material world to try and control and exploit some part of material nature and materialistic people. So, this is the main problem that these different philosophers over the last millions of years have come up with different philosophies to deal with this struggle for existence. As soon as we come to the material world and work for sense gratification, we are going to be struggling for domination with insects, animals, flies, moths, birds, bears, lions, tigers, and human beings, all classes of human beings, and viruses and funguses and bacteria and cataclysmic events like earthquakes and floods, and we're going to be struggling against all these negative things. And why is that? Because we're not meant to be here. That's why all these negative things exist. But we think that by using our intelligence and scientific research and advancement, we can control these things. And then there's a question of social organization of people, because people want to live together in cities or countries and towns, so there has to be some process of organizing economic development, religious activity, economic development, sense gratification, and possible liberation from the whole cycle. Okay, so one of those theories of how to organize society to overcome or at least make easier the struggle for existence, make everything equitable for everyone, no more one person is better than another person, is communism. So in this discussion, Prabhupada has some of his disciples, Prabhupada purposely asked his disciples to study these different philosophies and present them to him, and he would comment on it. And the title of the book is The Dialectical Spiritualism, and it's a very interesting read. But we're going to just deal with one today, and that is communism, because communism is on the ascendancy in the United States and Canada and many of the European countries. It comes and goes, but now it's become very prominent in America, which is unbelievable, but true. And also in Canada. In Canada now, in the last 2-3 years, 49 churches, most of them Catholic churches, have been burned down by communist agitators. It's becoming a serious problem. They're trying to eliminate Christianity in Canada. Canada, by the way, is full of crazy people. I mean, absolutely insane people, And their prime minister's #1 insane person, Mr. Trudeau. But that's another question. That's another issue. But and communism is on the rise in the United States. I mean, the whole city council in Seattle are communists or socialists, one or the other, and you can see what's happening in Portland, a whole bunch of cities. You have these very, very radical liberals who have taken over some seats of the government, and they're trying to change American society. Now, I'm not an advocate of American society. Yeah, there are faults in it, no doubt about it. But communism is just as faulty, and this is what we're going to hear today. So this disciple Shamsundar, he says to Prabhupada, Karl Marx contended that philosophers have only interpreted the world. The point is to change it. His philosophy is often called dialectical materialism because it comes from the dialectic of George Hegel, who was a German philosopher. And his theory was that throughout history there's been thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. That means there's an idea how to organize society. And then, because in the practice of that idea, the people are not happy. They're dissatisfied. So then they do the opposite of what that economic and social philosophy was. And then they put the two together, the one and then the opposite of it, and they make something new called a synthesis. And Hegel said this is the way life in social organization has been since the beginning of time. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. So Marx adopted this idea of Hegel, but gave his own twist to it. So his philosophy is often called dialectical materialism because it comes from the dialectic of George Hegel, thesis, antithesis, synthesis. When applied to society, his, meaning Marx, philosophy is known as communism. His idea is that for many generations, the bourgeoisie, or the property owners, have competed with the proletariat, the working class, and this conflict will terminate in the communist society. In other words, the workers will overthrow the capitalistic class and establish a so-called dictatorship of the proletariat, which will finally become a classless society. So this is what you would call a summary of what communism is and what it's striving for, as purported by Marx. Now, Prabhupada says, how is a classless society possible? Men naturally fall into different classes. Your nature is different from mine. So how can we artificially be brought to the same level? Well, Krishna also says in the 4th chapter, 13th verse, Chaturvanya Mayasista, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, Tasya Kartaram Apimam, Vidya Kartaram Avyayam. According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable. So here, right away, Marx is purporting something that is impossible. But he claims it's possible, you see. Making a classless society. Everyone's on the same level. But no one's on the same level, you see, because everyone is influenced by the modes of material nature differently, and also everyone has different karma from previous life. So how can they all become equal? So this is Prabhupada's point. Shamsundar. His idea is that human nature or ideas are molded by the means of production. Therefore, everyone can be trained to participate in the classless society. The means of production means how things are produced, right? So there are so many things being produced in factories. And we spoke about this a little bit yesterday. And basically, factories are creating things that are not really necessary in many ways, but they seem necessary, and therefore people buy those things, and therefore society is based on different types of economic development and economic theories. Okay, so Prabhupada said, and then Shamsundar says, the communists have not created a classless society. No, Prabhupada says, and then Shamsundar is quoting Prabhupada where he says, the communists have not created a classless society. We have seen in Moscow how a poor woman will wash the streets while her boss sits comfortably in his car. So where is the classless society? Prabhupada went to Moscow right before he came to Paris in 1971. He stayed there a few days, and he observed and he saw that the people were not happy. And there was not a classless society, even though communism had been running since 1917 till 1971 when Prabhupada went there. So it's about more than 50 years already. And in that time, they did not actually have a classless society, nor were the people happy. So Prabhupada, if you want to make a classless society, then training is required. Shamsundar, yes, Prabhupada. And what will be the center of training for this classless society? What will be the motto? Shamsundar. The motto is, from each according to his ability, to each according to his need. The idea is that everyone would contribute something and everyone would get what he needed. Prabhupada. But everyone's contribution is different. A scientific man contributes something, and a philosopher contributes something else. The cow contributes milk, and the dog contributes service as a watchdog. Even the trees, the birds, and beasts. Everyone is contributing something. So by nature, a reciprocal arrangement is already there among social classes. How can there be a classless society? Shamsundar. Well, Marx's idea is that the means of production will be owned in common. No one would have an advantage over anyone else, and thus one person could not exploit another. Marx is thinking in terms of profit. Prabhupada. First, we must know what profit actually is. For example, the American hippies already had profit. They were from the best homes, their fathers were rich, they had everything, yet they were not satisfied. They rejected it. No, this idea of a classless society based on profit sharing is imperfect. Well, profit sharing in a communist state is based on taxation. People work and they get taxed. Like, for example, in a communist state, you're not allowed to have your own business. Everybody has to work for the state. And the state does not let you make a profit. And and the state is the employer of everyone. Well, that was in the transitional stage, but the Soviet communist experiment never got out of the transitional stage, where the we're transiting from capitalism to pure communism. In pure communism, there are no bosses. Everyone works cooperatively. Everyone is on the same level. There are no classes, and everyone contributes, and everyone receives what they need. So that's the theory. But the Soviet Union never reached that state. It ended up being a dictatorship. Right. Then it says, Prabhupada says, first we must know what profit actually is. For example, the American hippies already had profit, and he's talking about that. And then he says, besides, the communists have not created a classless society. We have seen in Moscow how a poor woman will wash the streets while her boss sits comfortably in his car. So where is the classless society? As long as society is maintained, there must be some higher and lower classification. But if the central point of society is one, then whether one works in a lower or higher position, he doesn't care. For example, our body has different parts, the head, the legs, the hands. But everything works for the stomach. Shamsundar. Actually, the Russians supposedly have the same idea. They claim the common worker is just as glorious as the top scientist or manager. Prabhupada. But in Moscow, we have seen that not everyone is satisfied. One boy who came to us was very unhappy because in Russia, young boys are not allowed to go out at night. Shamsundar. The Russian authorities would say that he has an improper understanding of Marxist philosophy. Prabhupada. That improper understanding is inevitable. They will never be able to create a classless society because, as I've already explained, everyone's mentality is different. Shamsundar. Marx says that if everyone is engaged according to his abilities in a certain type of production, and everyone works for the central interest, then everyone's ideas will become uniform. That's their theory, right? Prabhupada. Therefore, we must find out the real central interest. In our International Society for Krishna Consciousness, everyone has a central interest in Krishna. Therefore, one person is speaking, another person is typing, another is going to the press or washing the dishes, and no one is grudging because they are all convinced they are serving Krishna. Okay, so here, by talking about Marxism, Prabhupada now comes to explaining what Krishna consciousness is and how it is basically the ideal communism. But it's spiritual communism, not materialistic communism, as Marx was propounding or explaining. Shamsundar. Marx's idea is that the center is the state. Prabhupada. But the state cannot be perfect. If the Russian state is perfect, then why was Khrushchev driven from power? He was elected premier. Why was he driven from power? Yeah, Khrushchev was thrown out, and because he misbehaved, right? Just like Nixon was thrown out because he misbehaved. He was thrown out, forcibly. Trump was not thrown out forcibly, but he lost the election, so he was thrown out also, and so forth. So then, Prabhupada, but the state cannot be perfect. If the Russian state is perfect, then why was Khrushchev driven from power? He was elected premier. Why was he driven from power? Shamsundar. Because he was not fulfilling the aims of the people. Why should a sweeper be satisfied seeing someone else in the administrative post? He will think, he is forcing me to work as a sweeper in the street while he sits comfortably in a chair. So this is a quote by Prabhupada. Prabhupada. Well then, what is the guarantee the next premier will do? There's no guarantee. The same thing will happen again and again because the center, Khrushchev, was imperfect. People begrudged their labor. The same thing is going on in non-communist countries as well. The government is changed. The prime minister is deposed. The president is impeached. So what is the real difference between Russian communism and other political systems? What is happening in other countries is also happening in Russia, only they call it by a different name. When we talked with Professor Kotovsky of Moscow University, we told him he had to surrender. Either he must surrender to Krishna or to Lenin, but he must surrender. He was taken aback at this. In other words, he was shocked at what Prabhupada said. In other words, either you surrender to Krishna or you surrender to Lenin, but you have to surrender, right? Shamsundar. From studying history, Marx concluded that the characteristics of culture, the social structure, and even the thoughts of the people are determined by the means of economic production. In other words, working in factories, working in businesses, it will organize the way people think and to create a social structure and a culture based on their means of production. Prabhupada. How does he account for all the social disruption in countries like America, which is so advanced in economic production? Fantastic question by Prabhupada. He's brilliant. Yeah, in America there's a lot of protesting, right? And it's still going on today, as it was going on in the 1960s when Prabhupada is talking. There was a Vietnam War. There were a lot of protests against the war. There were protests for blacks to have equal rights, voting rights in the South and other places. And there was plenty of protests. I remember. I was there. There was plenty of protesting and fighting and violence in the streets. There was war for about 2 weeks in the United States. Many black people revolted against the United States government, and there was shooting and killing in major cities. I remember in Philadelphia there was war going on in black neighborhoods with police and army shooting them, and they were shooting back. And it happened in Philadelphia, happened in Detroit, happened in Atlanta, happened in a whole bunch, Los Angeles, a whole bunch of American cities. There was war in the streets between blacks and the government. And the war was being led by the Black Panthers that started in Oakland, California. And the Black Panthers were hunted down by the American police and army and either killed or imprisoned. And then the war stopped. The Civil War stopped. So Prabhupada's saying here, how does he account for all the social disruption in countries like America, which is so advanced in economic production? Shamsundar. He says that capitalism is a decadent form of economic production because it relies on the exploitation of one class by another. Prabhupada. But there's exploitation in the communist countries also. Khrushchev was driven out of power because he was exploiting his position. He was giving big government posts to his son and son-in-law. Shamsundar. He was deviating from the doctrine. Prabhupada. But since any leader can deviate, how will perfection come? First, the person in the center must be perfect. Then his dictations will be correct. Otherwise, if the leaders are all imperfect men, what is the use of changing this or that? The corruption will continue. Yeah, there's corruption in the Soviet Union. There's corruption in Russia today. There's corruption in the United States. There's corruption in European governments. There's corruption in the Muslim world. It's everywhere. Shamsundar. Presumably, the perfect leader would be one who practiced Marxist philosophy without deviation. Prabhupada. But Marxist philosophy is also imperfect. His proposal for a classless society is unworkable. There must be one class of men to administer the government, one class of men to sweep the streets. How can there be a classless society? Why should a sweeper be satisfied seeing someone else in the administrative post? He will think, he's forcing me to work as a sweeper in the street while he sits comfortably in a chair. In our international society, I am also holding the superior post. I am sitting in a chair, and you are offering me garlands and the best food. Why? Because you see a perfect man whom you can follow. That is the mentality. That mentality must be there. Everyone in the society must be able to say, yes, here is a perfect man. Let him sit in a chair, and let us all bow down and work like menials. Where is that perfect man in the communist countries? Shamsundar. The Russians claim that Lenin is a perfect man. Prabhupada. Lenin? But no one is following Lenin. Lenin's only perfection was that he overthrew the Tsar's government. What other perfection has he shown? The people are not happy simply reading Lenin's books. I studied the people in Moscow. They're unhappy. The government cannot force them to be happy artificially. Unless there is a perfect ideal man in the center, there cannot possibly be a classless society. Shamsundar. Perhaps they see the workers and the managers in the same way that we do, in the absolute sense. Since everyone is serving the state, the sweeper is as good as the administrator. Prabhupada. But unless the state gives perfect satisfaction to the people, there will always be distinctions between higher and lower classes. In the Russian state, that sense of perfection in the center is lacking. Shamsundar. Their goal is the production of material goods for the enhancement of human being. Well, Prabhupada said, the only way to have a truly classless society is to find that method by which both the managers and the workers will feel equal happiness. Prabhupada, but that is useless. In other words, the goal is the production of material goods for the enhancement of human well-being. Economic production in America has no comparison in the world, yet people are dissatisfied. See, Prabhupada's coming back every time with a perfect answer. The young men are confused. It is nonsensical to think that simply by increasing production, everyone will become satisfied. No one will be satisfied. Man is not meant simply for eating. He has mental necessities, intellectual necessities, spiritual necessities. In India, many people sit alone silently in the jungle and practice yoga. They do not require anything. How will increased production satisfy them? If someone were to say to them, if you give up this yoga practice, I will give you 200 bags of rice, they would laugh at the proposal. It is animalistic to think that simply by increasing production, everyone will become satisfied. Real happiness does not depend on either production or starvation, but upon peace of mind. What a great statement that is. For example, if a child is crying, but the mother does not know why, the child will not stop simply by giving him some milk. Sometimes this actually happens. The mother cannot understand why her child is crying, and though she is giving him her breast, he continues to cry. Similarly, dissatisfaction in human society is not caused solely by low economic production. That is nonsense. There are many causes of dissatisfaction. The practical example is America, where there is sufficient production of everything. Yet the young men are becoming hippies. They are dissatisfied, confused. No, simply by increasing economic production, people will not become satisfied. Marx's knowledge is insufficient. Perhaps because he came from a country where people were starving, he had that idea. Shamsundar, yes, now we've seen that production of material goods alone will not make people happy. Prabhupada, because they do not know that real happiness comes from spiritual understanding. That understanding is given in the Bhagavad Gita. God is the supreme enjoyer, and he's the proprietor of everything. We are not actually enjoyers. We are all workers. These two things must be there, an enjoyer and a worker. For example, in our body, the stomach is the enjoyer, and all other parts of the body are workers. So the system is natural. There must always be someone who is the enjoyer and someone who is the worker. It is present in the capitalist system also. In Russia, there's always conflict between managers and the workers. The workers say, if this is a classless society, why is that man sitting comfortably and ordering us to work? The Russians have not been able to avoid this dilemma, and it cannot be avoided. There must be one class of men who are the directors or enjoyers, and another class of men who are the workers. Therefore, the only way to have a truly classless society is to find that method by which both the managers and the workers will feel equal happiness. For example, if the stomach is hungry and the eyes see some food, immediately the brain will say, "Oh legs, please go there," and hand pick it up, and now please put it in the mouth. Immediately the food goes into the stomach, and as soon as the stomach is satisfied, the eyes are satisfied, the legs are satisfied, and the hand is satisfied. But Marx would use this as a perfect example of communism, Prabhupada. But he has neglected to find out the real stomach. Shamsundar, his is the material stomach, Prabhupada, but the material stomach is always hungry again. It can never be satisfied. In the Krishna consciousness movement, we have the substance for feeding our brains, our minds, and our souls. Yasya prasada, Bhagavat prasada. If the spiritual master is satisfied, then Krishna is satisfied. And if Krishna is satisfied, then everyone is satisfied. Therefore, you are all trying to satisfy your spiritual master. Similarly, if the communist countries can come up with a dictator who, if satisfied, automatically gives satisfaction to all the people, then we will accept such a classless society. But this is impossible. A classless society is only possible when Krishna is in the center. For the satisfaction of Krishna, the intellectual can work in his own way, the administrator can work in his way, the merchant can work in his way, and the laborer can work in his way. This is truly a classless society. Shamsundar, how is this different from the communist country where all sorts of men contribute for the same central purpose? Prabhupada. No envy, but that perfection is not possible in the material world. Therefore, Marxist theories are useless. Yes, see, because you can see there are people protesting in Russia today. There were people protesting against the communist government in the Soviet Union also. And people are protesting in America, and people are protesting in China, which is a communist country. People are protesting in every country because they're not satisfied. It has nothing to do, well, there might be some little influence by insufficient production of necessities, but it has nothing to do with that, actually. It's because they cannot artificially create a classless society where everyone is on the same level. It's not possible. Everyone has different karma, everyone has different capabilities, has different types of bodies, is influenced differently by the modes of material nature. So nothing can make everybody equal. However, when Lord Ramachandra was king in Ayodhya, everyone was satisfied. And when there was someone who was not satisfied, the Lord did everything. He took it personally and did everything to make sure everyone was satisfied. And he lived a very austere life himself. He was not living as a vishayi, a sense gratifier. He denied himself all sense gratification because his wife was in exile, and he lived like her. She was living in the jungle. So although he was king, he lived as if he was in the jungle. He would sleep on the floor. He would not assume any opulence other than being the manager of the whole world at that time. He did the management in a perfect way, and still his lifestyle was completely austere. So that's why everyone loved Lord Ramachandra. He didn't have any enemies. Only Ravana, because he was an envious person. So Prabhupada focuses on envy here. But that perfection is not possible in the material world. Therefore, Marxist theories are useless. Shamsundar. But on the other hand, the capitalists also make slaves of their workers. Prabhupada. Wherever there is materialistic activity, there must be imperfection. But if they make Krishna the center, then all problems will be resolved. Shamsundar. Are you saying that any system of organizing the means of production is bound to be full of exploitation? Prabhupada. Yes, certainly, certainly. The materialistic mentality means exploitation. It doesn't matter whether it's communism or capitalism or socialism or whatever, dictatorship. There's always going to be exploitation. Shamsundar. Then what is the solution? Prabhupada. Krishna consciousness. Shamsundar. How is that? Prabhupada. Just make Krishna the center and work for him. Then everyone will be satisfied. As it is stated in the 4th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Yata taror mula nise janena tripyanti tat skanda bhujo pasakaha prano paharach shayatendriyanam tataiva sarvar hanam atrutejya. If you simply pour water on the root of a tree, all the branches, twigs, leaves, and flowers will be nourished. Similarly, everyone can be satisfied simply by atruteja. Achyuta means Krishna, and ija means worship. So this is the formula for a classless society. Make Krishna God the center and do everything for him. There are no classes in our International Society for Krishna Consciousness. Now you are writing philosophy, but I want you to wash dishes. You will do so immediately because you know that whatever you do, you are working for Krishna and for your spiritual master. In the material world, different kinds of work have different values, but in Krishna consciousness, everything is done on the absolute platform. Whether you wash dishes or write books or worship the deity, the value is the same because you are serving Krishna. That is a classless society. Actually, the perfect classless society is Vrindavana. In Vrindavana, some are cowherd boys, some are cows, some are trees, some are fathers, some are mothers, but the center is Krishna, and everyone is satisfied simply by loving him. When all people become Krishna conscious and they understand how to love him, then there will be a classless society. Otherwise, it is not possible. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. So this is fantastic purport, and we should believe this because it's based on Bhagavad Gita and Krishna consciousness. But we have to demonstrate it. That's what we're trying to do in the temple. We're demonstrating, everyone cooperating. No one is dissatisfied because everyone has a chance to serve Krishna. And Krishna is accepting their service and reciprocating by giving them intelligence to understand Krishna consciousness. And the regular classes and the regular kirtans and the regular prasadam distribution and all these things keep people happy. And like this Sunday, we're going to have the boat festival for Radha and Krishna. And everyone will be happy. And there'll be nice prasadam. And so many nice activities will be there. So that is Krishna consciousness. It's called spiritual communism. And we'll talk about this some more. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Shri Guru Charana Padma Kevala Bhakati Sadma Vando Mui Savadana Mate Vando Mui Savadana Mate Chanara Prasade Bhai E Bhava Toriya Jai Krishna Prapti Hoya Oite Krishna Prapti Hoya Hoite Gurumukha Padma Vakya Chitete Goriyaya Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Arana Koriya Maneya Sa Shri Guru Charane Rati Aise Uttama Gati Prasade Pure Sarva Sa Ye Prasade Pure Sarva Sa Chakshudana Dilaje Janmi Janmi Prabhu Se Divya Gyani De Pokasito Prema Bhakti Jaha Hoite Avidya Vinasa Jate Vedega Janara Charito Shri Guru Karuna Sindhu Adana Janara Bandhu Lokena Lokera Jivana Haha Prabhu Koradoya Deha Muri Padachaya Ebeya Sakasaki Bhuvana Ebeya Sakasaki Bhuvana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Ebeya Sakasaki Bhuvana Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Haribol, Gora Haribol, Nitai Gora Haribol. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Jai Om Vishnupad, Paramahansa Pararajika Chasta Terasata Shri Shrimadi's Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Goswami Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anantakoti Vaishnavindra ki jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki jai. Prem Shri Gaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopinath Sam Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhana ki jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki jai. Shri Mayapura Dham ki jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham ki jai. Tulasi Devi ki jai. Bhakti Devi ki jai. Ganga Maya ki jai. Jamuna Maya ki jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki jai. Harinam Sankirtan ki jai. Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the Sum of the devotees, all glories to the Sum of the all glories to the Sum of the all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Guranga, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, Patita Pavana ki jai. Gaura Premanandi Haribol. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Putri Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami. Namaste Saraswati Devi Guruvai Pacharya Namaste Saraswati. Paskadya Jasatarana. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu. The lotus feet of our spiritual master are the only way by which we can attain the pure devotional service. I bow down to his lotus feet with great awe and reverence. By his grace one can cross the ocean of material suffering and obtain the mercy of Krishna. My only wish is to have my consciousness purified by the words emanating from his lotus feet. Attachment to his lotus feet is a perfection that fulfills all desires. He opens my darkened eyes and fills my heart with transcendental knowledge. He is my Lord, birth after birth. From him ecstatic prema emanates. By him ignorance is destroyed. The Vedic scriptures sing of his character. Our spiritual master is the ocean of mercy, the friend of the poor and Lord and master of the devotees. O Master, be merciful unto us. Give us the shade of your lotus feet. Your fame is spread throughout all the three worlds. We take shelter of your lotus feet. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Namaste.